Hi there, I'm Drew Badger, the world's #1 English fluency guide, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to another advanced listening practice lesson. Well, today I wanted to share a story because I'm always interested in connections and helping you see connections between things related to fluency or language learning specifically with just things in everyday life, maybe life in general, like relationships with people or sports or business, anything else, because really there are connections between all of these things. And the more creative you can train your mind to be, and really this just means seeing connections between different things, the easier it is for you to speak fluently. And what I mean by this is right now I'm, again, not making these videos without any script or anything. I'm just using connections in my mind to allow the language to flow out of me without thinking. And the way I do this is by kind of cultivating a mind that lets me draw different connections between the specific words and phrases that I can use. So in this situation, I might use one phrase, but maybe, you know how it happens in conversations, you want to say something and you don't quite know the right way to express it, so you have to move like water and, move to that other word or phrase that might be appropriate for the situation, even if it's not perfect. But the point is that you continue moving forward. And the more connections that you have, and these are connections like, okay, I could use this phrase or this word in a particular situation, the more of these connections that you have, the easier it is for you to continue speaking because you know of many different ways to explain a particular thing for a particular situation. So with this idea of being able to express yourself in different ways and to make connections between different things, I thought I would tell just a quick story today about something that happened to me recently. So I was talking with a friend of mine who's also an entrepreneur, and so this is just a person that builds businesses, much like I do, and he was asking me, or kind of telling me a story about how he was working with his team to test some things on his website, and they were wondering, like asking me, should we do this thing or should we do that thing on the website? And he was also explaining that his team was kind of arguing about things like they should do it this way or they should do it that way. And I said, kind of my advice, they were asking for my advice, and I said, well, it doesn't really matter what internally you think should be happening on your website. The only real conversation that's important is the conversation between the website or the business, and the website is the connection to that with the market itself. So it doesn't matter if you spend 10 hours thinking, should we use a green button on the website or should we use a yellow button? And you have like a chart on your wall that says, here's a good idea for this one, here's a good idea for that one, and you argue back and forth, and people have their own opinions, and your ego gets involved, like, well, the green button was my idea and the yellow button was his idea, and all this other stuff. Like, you can forget about all that if you just put the question, whatever that thing is, to the market itself. So if you think like, you don't talk with other people within the company and say, do you think people would buy this? And you talk like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? That's a complete waste of time. You go directly to the market and say, hey, here's this product. Here's how much it is. Here's how you can buy it. And if people buy it, then there you go. People bought the product and they're willing to pay for it. But if they don't, then I guess it's time to try to think of something else. So in this instance, I was saying that like when you're having a conversation with people in this way, it doesn't really matter what people are doing as long as you just like take it to the market and get the actual final result from them. So you think maybe you spend 10 hours on this thing and then you create a split test. And if you're unfamiliar with this, this is when maybe you have two different web pages and they're exactly the same except for one element of them is different. So you have a green button on one page and a yellow button on another page, and you're giving the opportunity of like sending the traffic to that web page to one of those two different versions. So 50% of the people get one version and 50% get the other, and then you look and see which version performed better. So this is split testing. Now the connection from this, and again, it's important to train yourself to be looking for connections all the time in life, but the connection here for language learning is that often we have a dialogue with ourselves. We're having a conversation with ourselves in the same way that people in the same company would be arguing about something like, should we do this or should we do that? Should we express it this way or should we use this color? And in your mind, you're thinking like, should I use this word or that word? And you're really, you're wasting your time when you do that. Really, it's better to just say something. You just pick one thing and say it, and you're kind of split testing the idea or split testing the word for that particular situation. Now, I made a video recently where I was talking about the difference between saying like good evening or saying good night. And when you're in that situation, and maybe you won't necessarily get a specific note from a person you're speaking with, so that native speaker you're listening to or who is listening to you might want to be polite and not to say anything rude like, hey, you like made a mistake. You should have said good evening instead of good night, because we're just meeting in the evening and it's not something we're like ending the conversation here. So in one of those situations, you have the opportunity, because this is not like the last person you'll meet. I've spoken about this recently as well, about always like what's the next opportunity you're going to have. So this means that you forget about all the worry and all the conversations that happen in your head, and you go straight to the market. You go straight to the conversation itself. And even if you don't know which one is correct to say, you pay attention to just trying one of those versions. So I meet somebody and I say, oh, good night. And then they look at me and I notice they give me a weird expression. And I think, oh, okay, like, so maybe I should be not using good night. I should be using good evening instead. So this was a split test. The next person I meet, I try using good evening with them, and like, wow, like they give me a nice like good evening back. And I know, I've got the right answer. The market is telling me exactly what I should be using if I'm paying attention to that. So when you're getting into a situation where you actually have to speak, this is the only situation that counts. Whatever it is you're thinking about in your head, like you could spend 10 hours trying to decide if it's good or bad, or like thinking about options in your mind. But the best thing to do is just get into the conversation, because you know there's always going to be another opportunity to express yourself. You don't have to worry about what if we send 5 people to that web page and it doesn't do very well, but we send 5 people to another web page and it does better. Fantastic. So we got like maybe 5 people didn't enjoy whatever that web page was, but we do now have better information that can affect way more people in the future. And there are lots of people on this planet. There are lots of people that you will have the opportunity to speak with. So you don't have to worry about like using a particular word or making a particular mistake with one single person, because it's just another opportunity for you to learn from that situation. So forget about this inner dialogue, this inner discussion with yourself about how to do things and worrying about things. You jump right into the conversation, and then you pay attention to what's happening there. You pay attention to the word that you use or the phrase, and then see what the reaction is like from the other person. If they understand or maybe don't quite understand, then you have a better idea of what you should be using instead. And if it's a particularly kind and helpful person you're speaking with, they might just give you a specific advice about, oh, don't say good evening, you should be saying good night. Or don't say good night, you should be saying good evening. So in those situations, don't worry about, what the situation is. It's just another chance for you to get to speak, and it's another opportunity for you to split test in the same way that a web designer might be split testing different designs. The kind of split testing thing here is the way you express yourself, the vocabulary you're using, the grammar you're using, and these are all just examples for where you say something and then you're listening for the feedback from the other person, and then you learn to correct over time. So forget about this conversation in your head, jump right into conversations, and you're going to be feeling much more confident about how you speak, because really the important thing is just to get the feedback. And the only way you do that is if you speak. Well, that's the end of this lesson. If you have enjoyed it, do click that like button. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So become a subscriber so you can make sure you understand and you're notified as soon as we release the next one. And I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye. To continue learning, click on the link in this video to download Speak English Naturally, our free guide to speaking and sounding like a native English speaker. The guide reveals the 3 most important kinds of conversational English you must learn if you want to sound native, and will help you experience instant improvement in your fluency and speaking confidence. To download your free guide on a mobile device, click on the link in the upper right of this video. To download your free guide from a computer, click on the link in the lower right of this video. I look forward to seeing you in the guide.